How many games will the Kansas City Chiefs win in 2024? The Super Bowl champs, the back-to-back Super Bowl champs, are looking for the three-peat. But how will their regular season go? Will they be the number one seed in 2024? Or will they have to go on the road once again to capture that Super Bowl championship? Before I give you my record prediction for the Chiefs in 2024 and break down their schedule, the difficult matchups where they may slip up, the easy matchups, and everything in between, don't forget to Gronk spike the like button or Kelsey spike the like button. Get in the comments and let me know how many games you think the Chiefs will win in 2024. I know that there's going to be at least one Chiefs fan who has already let me know that I'm a complete hater for not having the Chiefs undefeated. So that guy's going to tell me that they're going 7-peat. So yeah, get in the comments and let me know if you agree with that individual, if you agree with me, or somewhere in between. And subscribe to the channel for the rest of the AFC West breakdowns and all 32 NFL teams. Let's take a look at that Chiefs schedule. Some awesome games early on the calendar for the Chiefs as they open up the NFL season for the entire league at home as the Super Bowl champs at Arrowhead. Banner is going to be raised, and it's going to be against last year's number one seed in the AFC, the Baltimore Ravens, the MVP, the reigning MVP of the NFL, Lamar Jackson. They will host the Ravens for week one, and this will be a great matchup. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be back and forth. Last year, the Chiefs pulled off the upset in the AFC Championship in Baltimore. They had a lot of success on offense early. Then it came to a halt in the second half. And the Ravens, I think many would consider that a choke. The way that they game planned for that game, the lack of running the football, that, of course, fumble at the goal line by Zay Flowers, the multiple interceptions from Lamar Jackson. The Chiefs did play phenomenal defense and deserved to win the game for sure. But at the same time, I think there's going to be vengeance in the hearts of the Ravens to try to get this one back. So that's what makes it so exciting. Now, the Ravens have a lot of turnover here for this game. Multiple offensive linemen that started in the AFC Championship are now on new teams, including the right tackle, including the guard position, both guard positions. And then they're going to have a healthy Mark Andrews, something they didn't really have in the AFC Championship. They're going to have Derrick Henry at running back, something they didn't have in the AFC Championship. And they're going to have a different defensive coordinator without Patrick Queen or Geno Stone in that defense. So there's a lot of turnover for the Ravens. For the Chiefs, not as much. Rashee Rice might not be in the lineup, of course. They might have a new left tackle in the lineup. They might not, of course, have L'Jarius Sneed, but there's still a lot of the same elements that made the Chiefs the Super Bowl champs. So I think that result will end up being the Chiefs win because I think they've got more chemistry early in the year. It's, of course, a big energy game for the Chiefs that they are going to be raising the banner. Their fans are going to be absolutely electric. It's going to be loud. It's going to be a great atmosphere. And I just always lean to the home team, the Super Bowl champs. We typically see, no matter how those Super Bowl champ teams end up kind of being for the entire year, we see them perform at a very high level in that opener. It's very rare that that Super Bowl champion team gets blown out or loses or doesn't show up in that game. So, yeah, the Chiefs did lose this game last year because they didn't have Chris Jones or Travis Kelce against the Lions, and little did we know the Lions were that good. But I think they'll win it this year. I think the fact that they lost it last year actually makes it less likely that they'll lose it this year. So I'm going to go with Kansas City on that opener. Week number 2, they play the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow. This is a marquee matchup. I kind of wish it was a little bit later in the season, although I think the NFL is going with it in week 2 because they've understood that Joe Burrow has not been able to make it through every single NFL season. So they want to cash in on that Joe Burrow-Patrick Mahomes matchup that they maybe missed out on last year. So this is a big game. It could go either way. The Bengals, though, have won 3 out of the last 4 matchups against Kansas City, and it is historically, other than maybe Tom Brady, the worst matchup for Patrick Mahomes head-to-head, Joe Burrow. The Bengals do have another team, just like the Chiefs, that have great chemistry. They have many of their players that have been around since 2021 in this era of Joe Burrow and the Bengals. Pretty much their entire defense is the same. Pretty much their entire offense is the same. They've got the same head coach, the same defensive coordinator. They do have a different offensive coordinator this year. But I think this game will be one that it's going to be hard to match the Bengals' passion. I think the Bengals are going to come in here with a chip on their shoulder, with a real, not revenge, but like a point to prove. I don't think the Chiefs really have that in this game. Maybe because last time they did play the Bengals and Burrow, they did beat them in the AFC Championship in their building. For the Bengals, not only did they have vengeance for that game, but it's also a new season of they weren't around last year. They weren't in the playoffs to beat the Chiefs. They weren't, going deep in the playoffs. So they're going to be focused on this game. I think this is a very psychological game. I think this is a game where the Bengals are going to be pouring everything into this result early in the year. And I think they're going to get the result. I think it's going to be close. I think it could go either way, probably a field goal game. But as we've seen, the Bengals with those receivers, I think it's going to be hard for this new Chiefs secondary to really match up in the same way without L'Jarius Sneed. I think also, the Bengals have the best offensive line they've ever had in front of Joe Burrow, which is going to make a difference in blocking that defensive line. And on the other side, I think the Bengals have always had enough trickery on defense to be able to confuse and make a few plays and a few stops against Patrick Mahomes. So the Bengals are that one team that are not afraid of the Chiefs, and I think they get the win there. Week number 3. This is actually low-key a really good game. It's Sunday Night Football. It's in Atlanta. Kirk Cousins' big debut for the Falcons on Sunday Night Football. I think the Chiefs will win, but this is a game that I think is pretty, interesting. It could actually end up being a little bit of a shootout. I wouldn't be surprised by that. It's in the Atlanta Dome. Of course, the Falcons have a pretty good offensive line. They've got a great running game, a new offensive coordinator, and that Rams system that they'll be bringing. If Kirk Cousins is anywhere close to the quarterback that we saw last year, that they're going to be able to move the football and score points, the Atlanta Falcons, on a regular basis. With the skill talent that they do have, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Darnell Mooney, I think that they're going to be able to move the ball through the air and on the ground and possess the football. And it's really going to come down to how good is their defense this year. Honestly, I don't think it's very good. So I could see Patrick Mahomes having the best game of his season in week number 3 early in this calendar and really having a huge statement Sunday Night Football game after they lose to the Bengals. Probably a game that's close early, a little bit of a back and forth, and the Chiefs find a way to pull away with a late stop and a late score. So I got the Chiefs winning that game in Atlanta. Then in week number 4, the Chiefs travel to Los Angeles to play the Chargers. The Chargers. Jim Harbaugh, first appearance to take on Andy Reid with Justin Herbert at his side. This is one of those matchups where the Chargers always tend to play the Chiefs very close, but very rarely do they actually beat them. It's always kind of down to the wire. And I don't know if I'd say very rarely. I mean, they have beaten them, I guess, once, 2 out of the last 3 years. So that's not bad, I think, if my math is correct. But those were the Brandon Staley Chargers. And these are the Jim Harbaugh Chargers. And I think the biggest thing the Chargers had going for them in those days was they had a very talented roster with a lot of skill talent, and they could keep up on the scoreboard with the Chiefs. And they would make a few plays on a 4th down in the red zone. They would be a little dicey. They would get a turnover or 2 and be able to pull off the upset. But this Chargers team, I don't really think has those elements. Despite still having Justin Herbert, their receiver talent is just not there, right? They don't have a big-time weapon. They don't have multiple weapons like Mike Williams and Keenan Allen any longer, or in his prime Austin Eckler, where they're able to make these plays that the Chiefs simply can't defend. The Chiefs' defense should be all over the Chargers' offense in this game. And then on the other side, the Chargers' defense is just average, right? It's nothing special. So I think the Chiefs can find a running game, kind of control the ball, frustrate Herbert. I think they'll be able to beat the Chargers, most likely both games, although I wouldn't be shocked if the Chargers pulled off one upset, just because it is a divisional matchup, and Herbert is one of those quarterbacks that it's hard to beat him twice in one season. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs to sweep the Chargers, but I could see one upset. Then we got in week number 5, a Monday Night Football matchup in Kansas City against the Saints. This should be the Chiefs all the way heading into the bye week. I mean, you've got the Saints that do have a pretty challenging defense, a good secondary, and Dennis Allen will certainly throw some things and some curveballs at Mahomes that might keep this game close early. But honestly, I don't really trust Derek Carr on the road in Kansas City to make enough plays to win this game against the Chiefs defense. I think this is a game that the Chiefs defense has a statement win after Mahomes has a couple nice victories against the Falcons and the Chargers. So they head into their bye week 4-1, which sounds about right. Then they take on the San Francisco 49ers in San Francisco. The NFL has done the Chiefs a favor by giving the Chiefs a bye right before they play their Super Bowl rematch, which would tend, to believe that the Chiefs would have an advantage. Now, the game is in San Francisco, though, so that is a big advantage for San Francisco, as of course, this is a Super Bowl revenge matchup for the 49ers. Last year, the Eagles had to go to Kansas City in a Super Bowl rematch game, and the Eagles still won before their ultimate downfall at the end of last season. So it depends how you look at this game. Do you think that the bye week for the Chiefs and the recent history of the Chiefs kind of sweeping the Niners despite them all being close games, do you take that into larger account, or do you take into the factor of revenge and home field into account? Right, the Niners have tried to make some changes in their personnel offensively and defensively. The Chiefs maybe have regressed in the defensive categories, but have gotten better in the offensive categories. So this could maybe be a little bit higher scoring than the Super Bowl game. I wouldn't be shocked by that, just because I think, with the removal of L'Jarius Sneed, I just feel like the Chiefs will not be able to play the man coverage that they were able to play in the Super Bowl, which ultimately was a huge difference maker in them being able to slow down McCaffrey, put numbers in the box, slow him down in the run game, and then also getting pressure, in those key moments with the Niners' injuries on the offensive line. So I could see the Niners moving the ball better, especially at home in this matchup. But then the Chiefs, I could also see moving the ball against the Niners. Just the style of defense that the Niners have, I feel like the Chiefs just match up well with their offense. Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, their new receivers that they'll have. I could see this being a bit of a shootout. So either way, I could see this game going. I've initially leaned towards the Niners here, but it's hard for me to not go with the history of this matchup and pick the Chiefs, especially considering they're coming off a bye. So I'm going to go with Kansas City, but I do think it's going to be very close. And ultimately, come week 7, it's probably going to come down to which team at this moment is playing better football. And I'm not sure who that's going to be, because I think both teams are going to be playing at a high level. Week 8, they play in Las Vegas, which could actually be a bit of like a sleeper game, because obviously the Raiders at home have to be taken seriously as a division rival, on top of the fact that they've actually given the Chiefs problems in recent history. But also, the Chiefs, they're much better than the Raiders. They have a much better quarterback than the Raiders. And while the Raiders are not intimidated, I don't know, is Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell, again, going to beat Patrick Mahomes? It's hard for me to believe. I do think the Raiders defense, does know how to play the Chiefs offense, which is a huge advantage. The Raiders can really run the ball, which tends to give the Chiefs a little bit of an issue. But I actually think the Chiefs play better in Vegas, in the Dome, indoors, than they play in Kansas City, because of the way that the Raiders play when they play the Chiefs. They understand how to play the Chiefs, which is kind of like a gritty, old school black and blue style. And that doesn't really work as well when it's a fast track. So I lean towards the Chiefs here, despite maybe a little bit of a sleeper game in terms of we're just coming off a win against the Niners. We had to go to, San Francisco. We were coming off the bye preparing for the Super Bowl rematch, and now we have to go to Las Vegas. So it's a little bit tricky, but I think the Chiefs will ultimately pull it off. In week number 9, they play Tampa Bay at home on Monday night, which is another Super Bowl type rematch here in prime time. Obviously no Tom Brady, but there's still a large portion of players like Vita Vea, Antoine Winfield, Levante David, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, so Todd Bowles. So there is a lot of elements here that has Super Bowl rematch qualities. We've seen this game after the Super Bowl, and the Chiefs have been able to figure that matchup out. Obviously, the Bucs are not as talented as they once were, and they don't have Tom Brady. So I'm going to go with Kansas City at home to win that game. Then in week 10, they play the Broncos. I'm not even going to explain this. They're just way better, and they're at home. They're going to win that game, despite the Broncos beating them last year at one time, which was like, I don't even know. They did beat them, right? Like, I'm not mistaken there. I'm pretty sure they did. I think Mahomes was sick in that game, but regardless, that's still shocking to think about. Week 11, the Buffalo Bills. I think the Bills beat the Chiefs in the regular season. They typically do, for whatever reason. The Bills typically beat the Chiefs, especially in Buffalo. Josh Allen just goes nuclear and makes plays like falling out of bounds, throwing the ball to an open man 15 yards down the field. That is kind of indefensible. And that's the toughest part when you play the Bills. You just, sometimes when Josh Allen is playing at this like Herculean level, you just can't defend it. It's just like, I don't know what to do. You throw your hands up and you play another day, right? But the Bills have made some adjustments with their roster. They've definitely gotten rid of some of the older players on defense and trying to get younger and faster. So we'll see how that works out for them. Offensively, they no longer have Stephon Diggs, but it's not like he really had great games against the Chiefs anyways. So I think Buffalo's approach to how they've played the Chiefs recently has been pretty strong, minus the fact that they've had a lot of injuries on defense. I think their defense plays a little bit better than they did in the AFC divisional round. I think Josh Allen still makes a number of plays in order to win that game, probably like 27-24, a close game that goes down to the wire. Week 12, they play Carolina to bounce back. They'll beat Carolina, who is still really bad. Week 13, they play the Raiders on Black Friday. If they're going to lose to the Raiders this year, I think it's this game. There's something about the Raiders playing on Black Friday, which just feels like the Raiders are going to win. I don't know why, but I'm going to go with it. Like I said, I think the Raiders know how to play the Chiefs when they're in Arrowhead and it's ugly weather. And Antonio Pierce gets them fired up for these games. Or their recent coaching staff, like especially the defensive coordinator there, has done a phenomenal job at slowing down the Chiefs. And with that running game, with Brock Bowers attacking those linebackers and safeties, with Devontae Adams just having games where he is uncoverable, sometimes the Raiders can come out there and really make some plays and win the game. So Max Crosby is also a guy that the Chiefs just can't block for whatever reason. So the Raiders, I think, are going to win that game. Probably really gritty, really ugly. But the Chiefs will lose one divisional matchup this year, and I think it will be to the Raiders. Week 15, they play the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland, which is another really tough game because Cleveland's defense is awesome. And I think the Chiefs could have a lot of issues with Cleveland in Cleveland, later in the year when it's probably pretty ugly and cold. And you've got to deal with Myles Garrett, that defensive line, Denzel Ward, that secondary. But I just don't know if I trust the Browns offense in this game. It doesn't feel like a great matchup for Deshaun Watson and Cleveland's offense. Maybe if Nick Chubb goes nuclear here, the Browns can pull off the upset. So this could be a game, if they don't lose to the Raiders, they might lose to the Browns in Cleveland. But I'm going to take the Chiefs just because I feel like I think their offense will manage the game enough to where their defense can make kind of the difference in the game. I feel like they'll go into this game understanding that as long as we don't have a bad game on offense and we can kind of matriculate the ball down the field, mix in the run, mix in the pass, screens, things like that, we'll win a gritty game through our defense because Deshaun Watson's not good enough to get it done. Week 16, the Houston Texans play in Kansas City on a Saturday. It's going to be a primetime game, and I've already picked this game. I got the Texans winning this game. I think the Texans are one of the hardest matchups in the NFL for Kansas City, and I'll explain why. First, DeMeco Ryans is extremely smart on defense, and they're going to have a good plan for that offense. Secondly, it's not like the Chiefs have phenomenal receiver talent to where they can really expose maybe the underwhelming aspect of Houston, which is their corner talent. Now, Derek Stingley is really good, but it's like corner 2, corner 3, not fantastic. But that being said, Houston has very good coverage linebackers who I think can keep up with Travis Kelce. They have hybrid safeties, and they got a really strong pass rush led by Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter, as well as Danico Autry. Then on offense, they're just one of the best offenses in football. They've got a great play caller. They've got too many receivers to try to really play man coverage at a consistent rate, which is what the Chiefs typically like to do in big games, right? Tank Dell, he can separate from man coverage. Stephon Diggs can separate from man coverage, and Nico Collins can separate. These aren't just receivers that are jump ball receivers. These are guys that actually get open. So it's going to be very hard for the Chiefs to play the style they want to play, which means they're probably going to have to play more zone, which is going to open up, underneath routes, Dalton Schultz in the middle of the field, Joe Mixon running the football. So it's a very difficult matchup, I think. The only way I really feel that Kansas City would be able to pull away from Houston, like I think regardless of the outcome, it would be close. The only way they'd be able to pull away is if Houston as a dome team is having to travel to Kansas City, especially late at week 16, and it's like snowing or something, or it's like really cold. Then Houston would have to prove a different element of their game that I'm not sure they really have yet. But that would be like the way that I feel Kansas City could pull it off. But if this game is kind of regular weather, I could see Stroud going toe-to-toe with Mahomes in this matchup and maybe coming out on top. Week 17, they play the Pittsburgh Steelers, and after a loss, I certainly don't see them losing. But this is a really short week for Kansas City. It's Saturday to Wednesday, which is outrageous, right? Which might actually end up hurting Kansas City going into the playoffs because they have to play a Saturday to a Wednesday game and finish the season Saturday, Wednesday, Sunday. That's difficult. So I almost see them kind of resting players in the last week of the season if possible. But I don't know if they're going to be able to if they want to capture the number 1 seed, which is going to be difficult because I have the Bengals and the Houston Texans kind of in the same range of wins and losses as Kansas City at the end of the year. So I think the Kansas City Chiefs will beat the Broncos in the last week of the season. But the Steelers have proven to be a pretty terrible matchup for Kansas City in terms of the Steelers can't match up with the Chiefs. It's been a really bad game. The Steelers don't have the offense to consistently move the ball and control the clock. And their defense is just the type of defense that doesn't really give Andy Reid or Patrick Mahomes a lot of issues. They kind of blitz too much. They're too risky. And their coverage is just not tight enough. They play too much zone. Mahomes tends to pick them apart. Kelce tends to have a big game. It's just not a good defensive scheme or anything that really matches up. Now, maybe with the addition of Patrick Queen, and if they've got a healthy Minka and stuff, maybe they can wrap that up. And if they tend to play a different style, maybe they'll surprise Kansas City here. But I just don't know if the Steelers have the offense to really score enough points. So ultimately, I've got the Chiefs at 13-4 with losses to Cincinnati, Buffalo, the Raiders, and the Texans. I could see them losing to the Browns. I could see them losing to the Niners. But otherwise, or even the Ravens. But otherwise, I think the range of wins and losses is somewhere from 14-3 to 12-5. It's somewhere in that range. It's a pretty tight range. I think they'll win more than 11, probably less than 15 this year. They are the Super Bowl champs. They are the reigning kings. Will they three-peat? I don't know. They'll definitely be in the conversation. They're still very talented, very good. They've got the best quarterback in the league and the most proven championship pedigree. So we'll find out what happens. This is an interesting schedule for the Chiefs this year. They play plenty of great games. The Bengals, the Bills, the Ravens, the Texans, to name a few. Looking forward to seeing all of those matchups, and a lot of them in prime time. You guys let me know what you think. Gronk, spike the like button, subscribe. It's Mitch. We'll see you in the next record prediction video. Peace.